my pleasure to introduce to you Juan Pablo Segura, who is the youngest member of the Bush School of Business Board of Visitors. Juan Pablo grew up in the Washington, D.C. area, so he's local. He went to the Heights School in Potomac, Maryland. I think there are a couple of Heights grads here. Yeah, there we go, a few, all right. He went to college at a small Catholic university in an unfashionable part of Indiana, whose name I won't mention. Currently, in addition to District Donuts, he's co-founder and president of Baby Scripts, which is a digital healthcare company focused on using the internet to reimagine how pregnancy care is delivered around the world. He was named a healthcare transformer by Startup Health, a top 20 up-and-coming industry leader by Managed Healthcare Executive, and a wireless life changer by CTIA. Has raised more than 14 million through four separate rounds of growth capital, and his company has signed significant revenue deals with 38 health systems and provider groups. He has published a number of thought pieces like 3 Musts for Raising Your First Round, The Future of Consumer Healthcare, and my favorite, Why Disruption in Health IT is Like a Tiramisu. I enjoy that very much.
Yeah, I really like sweets, if you can't notice. You know.
He co-founded District Donuts with his high school best friend when they were both 24 years old. They were spurred by their love of donuts as a favorite after-school snack, and they hired renowned pastry chef Christine Schaefer to design their donuts for them. You can find District Donuts at the Union Market, at the DC Wharf, Eastern Market at Georgetown, and today at the Bush School of Business. Please give a warm Bush School of Business welcome to Juan Pablo Segura.
Thanks, Andrew. All right, so there's a lot of an intro on the healthcare side, and then there's very little on the donut side, and I think I'm going to focus a lot more time on the donut side. So if you're wondering why I started both a pregnancy remote monitoring company and a gourmet donut company, it's because I'm a statistics guy, and so I said if I start 2 companies, one will fail, and so at least I'll have one company. And I'm very blessed in that both companies did really well, so now I have 2 companies. So it worked out that way, which is nice. I appreciate it. But yeah, I'm going to be spending hopefully a small portion of our time together sharing a few. I'll go through District Donut, our story, but I do want to save a lot of time for questions and answers. As Andrew said, I have raised a good amount of venture capital. I do have the blessing of being able to start companies in 2 very different categories, right? Healthcare IT and then hospitality with what we've done at District Donut. So if people have questions around like how to start a tech company, how to start a restaurant, can answer both very well. And anything else in terms of questions you might have about starting, building a team, how to find a co-founder, what else? How to not go insane when you start a company. I can cover everything, but I will kind of focus on District Donut because obviously we had some donuts. By the way, what do you guys think of District Donut? Good? That's it? Are you serious right now? Come on, guys. All right. Yeah, there you go. I want how many donuts did you have, Andrew? All right, there you go. But yeah, so like Andrew mentioned, I started District Donut about 2.5 years after I graduated from the University of Notre Dame. Refused to say it, but now that I'm on the board of visitors for the Bush School of Business, this will be a better business school than the University of Notre Dame. So, here, all right, at least I get something. All right, so good. Okay, I'm trying to engage you guys, so we'll get there. It's like it's like we're dating. Like we got to take it slow, and then we'll obviously get to know each other a lot better. So, in terms of our history, so I did 2.5 years before I started District Donut and Baby Scripts. I was a consultant at Deloitte. I absolutely hated my job as a consultant. Not to say that you won't love it when you get a consulting job. It's a great place to learn how to work. But I was very frustrated very early on, and so I said, I don't want a boss. This whole thing of doing performance reviews is pretty lousy, so how about I just eliminate that altogether by starting a couple businesses? And so this was me in 2015 when we opened the first District Donut. I think I kind of still look the same, right? I'm 31. I still have most of my hair, right? So that's pretty good. But it was not just me. It was Greg Mena, who I went to high school with at the Heights. And then it was Christine Schaefer, who is our cordon bleu trained pastry chef. And so, our vision has always been, we kind of have this tagline, it's called a better donut. And it's been a really interesting ride, and I'll talk through some of the dynamics of what we faced when we started District Donut. But I think the first thing that we've always focused on is being very customer centric. I don't know if anyone follows us on Instagram. We have a pretty good following, but it's all about, at the end of the day, great marketing, great taglines, etc. Will only get you to a certain point. You really just have to make an incredible product. And so I like to think, and hopefully you all confirm, that we do have the best donut in DC. But yeah, this was us opening our first store. It's a little pixelated, my apologies, but that was me 6 years ago. And we opened our first store in Eastern Market area. It's a neighborhood called Barracks Row. And what's been great is, as we've started and grown District Donut, we started in Barracks Row, but we actually built a commissary near Union Market, if folks have been over there. And we now have 5 stores, both in Union Market and Barracks Row, at the Wharf, I think it's one of the coolest areas in DC, in Georgetown and in Ballston. And in about a month, you're going to hear some pretty cool stuff about how we're doubling our footprint, but I can't share too much about that just yet. But our story's always been focused on the customer. Here are our kind of a couple stores, just so that if you ever run across them. This is at the Wharf. This is at the Ballston Quarter. And so I thought that I would focus a lot of my presentation around this concept of being good. And you're probably wondering, good, that sounds like average. Not talking about being average. If obviously you all have taken philosophy, so this is more of the Aristotelian good, right? Achieving excellence, right? Where, okay, I'm kind of a nerd, so we're going to go through that. But I kind of broke out my presentation in 4 different pieces, and I think all of these different areas apply to anyone that wants to start a company. And some of them are very scalable, product-focused, business-focused, but some of them are also very personality-focused. And I've learned a lot sitting across the table from prolific investors, whether in venture or in angel investing. We can kind of talk about the different categories if you want. Actually, maybe I'll reference them right now. Angel investing is essentially when you're trying to just get started. Think of like the wealthy uncle. Someone that has like a good amount of cash. They can't give you $1 million, but they can give you $50,000, $100,000. And then ventures when you're raising $5 million, $10 million checks, right? And so things that I've seen that have mattered, it's not always having the best business plan. It's not always, having a great product is table stakes. You have to have that. But at the end of the day, investors don't just look at how great your slides are. They look at you. They look at, can I trust this person? Do I think this person will work their tail off? And yeah, this business will probably fail, but at the same time, is this someone that won't abuse the trust that I'm giving them through my money, through my time, through my energy? And so that's why I have these 3 areas. First 2 are very kind of business focused, which is building good product. The second is making sure that you find the right partner. There are a lot of incredible companies that started off really well, and then because of leadership and because people couldn't agree, they break up and they're no longer in existence. So I think one of our recipes for success, and there's a pun there, right? Because you need a recipe to make donuts. But when you think of how we've gotten in this industry over the last 6 years, how we've survived. And in that section, I'll show you how many donut shops opened when we first started and how many are left. And I think it's a testament to the fact that we trust each other and we have a solid team. And then the last piece is more just to focus on you and what you can do to really give people, whether it's business partners, investors, and give them the trust and the confidence that they should invest in you. Why should they invest in you instead of the guy next to you? All right, everything's a competition, right? So why is that? And a lot of investors are getting 20, 30, 50 pitches a month. So when you think of the sheer quantity, how do they start to filter and pick someone like a District Donut or a Baby Scripts? And a lot of that has to do with you, right? What can they sense from you when they meet you? And that, again, that's not your GPA. It's just a lot more than that. And then the last piece is, this is one of my personal favorites, is don't forget to treat yourself. Well, it could be a donut, but as you grow, you give up a lot of things to be an entrepreneur. Whether it's a salary, it could be your romantic life. And so when you think about how you start to scale as a business, you can't forget about yourself. So be good. So hopefully, everyone's good after this presentation. All right, so kind of talk a little bit about how we've thought about these different areas. So being good from a product perspective, I think is pretty interesting in the donut space. And we're going to go deep into donuts. So if you didn't know a lot about donuts, you're going to know a lot about donuts after this presentation. So most of the industry in donut making, again, who would have thought that you'd be learning about donuts, it's very focused on trying to achieve maximum scale because donuts are really difficult to make. To make one donut or 500 donuts, it takes about 6 hours from beginning to end. So you can't just make one product, you have to make a ton. And so when you look at the individual kind of component parts of making a donut, the kind of core part is obviously the flour, right? How do you actually start making dough? That's the core of a donut. And most of these companies, to make dough takes a long time. It's very intensive. And so what most companies will do is they'll buy essentially a prefabricated or a pre-mixed dough mix, and they'll cut out about 3 hours of the donut making process. So it goes from 6 hours to 3 hours. And think about cost, right? Your variable cost, everyone's learning cost accounting, right? So you have your variable costs are very tied in labor to making the product. And so if you can cut 3 hours and reduce it by half, you're obviously making more money. But what do you sacrifice? And I think it's important when you look at the ingredients, look at, okay, great, there's flour and there's barley and there's sugar, but look at all the other things that I can't even identify. What the heck is sodium acid pyrophosphate, right? Think of dextrose, soy lecithin. I don't even know how to say that, right? It's just like reading like the Old Testament, and you're like, what the heck is this name? Like, so when you see the dynamic of even the decisions that you make when you first start off, right? You have to make pretty important decisions. Am I going to pay more at the very onset to try to make a better product? Or am I going to look at, right now paying off, being able to reap a couple extra percentage points on margin so that you can get off the ground faster and not have to worry about, the difficult process of making dough. And I mean, we, as I mentioned, went in a different direction. So we make our dough in-house from scratch. It takes us 3 hours to make it, right? We have massive mixers that are making 50 gallons worth of dough at a time, and everything is organic when we can get it. I mean, we try locally sourced. Some things are very hard to get locally sourced, like pistachios, right? But when you look at kind of the component parts, we kind of went back to the basics and we decided to do something very different. And it has its quality problems when you think about, okay, when you look at a company or using this dough mix, the shelf life is actually much longer because of the preservatives that they have in the dough mix. We have a problem because everything we use is all natural, so that donut, while it's amazing right out of the fryer and for the first 2 or 3 hours, don't worry, I made sure that the donuts were made very, very shortly before this, so you had good product. But you have to make business decisions about what do you do with the product after 3 or 4 hours of it being on the shelf. Do you keep it to obviously make more money and decrease your costs? Do you throw it away? And so we actually have a policy where we don't keep our donuts on the shelf for more than 4 hours. And that actually increases our cost because sometimes it snows or it's too hot and we don't have as much traffic through the store. And so all of a sudden you start seeing the dynamics and the difficulties of doing the product and building a product the right way. It's trade-offs. And right at the beginning, we didn't make a lot of money. We really focused on building the best product and the best brand. But again, it's paid off because we're the only donut company standing, and you'll see that in a second. And so, whether it's cutting the donuts, we do use some automation in that, but the frying process, right? Like this is how you make donuts. Some people think that you bake donuts. You do not bake donuts. You fry donuts. And so as you look at some of the trade-offs, I think the first piece to kind of take away from this, hopefully there are some takeaways, is are you willing to make the sacrifices to build a good or to make a good product? And that's on every entrepreneur's product roadmap. Whether it's software, what I do at Baby Scripts, you have to figure out, do I start off with an in-house development team, or do I outsource my product to India or to Pakistan? And all these decisions, they bubble up. And I've heard it called, and I love it if you read Ben Horowitz's book, he calls it technical debt. So you can cut corners at the beginning of a project, of a company, of an initiative, but at some point, you're gonna have to pay the technical debt back. It might not be in the first year, it might not be in the second year, but as you think about, okay, if you're using the bag mix, for example, at some point, that product, when it's compared to other product in your market, so we had a lot of competition when we started, people are gonna make a decision. Do they want something that doesn't taste that great because it's not that fresh, or do they want an inferior product at a different price? So you have to start making those decisions very early. It could be in software, it could be in restaurants, but technical debt is a real thing, and you really have to think about it as an entrepreneur. Second piece is work with good people. So I talked about like what the landscape was when we started District Donut, and this is kind of the power of the free market, and it still shocks me to this day. So when I was at Deloitte, I went to New York and I had a donut from this place called Donut Plant. And it was the first gourmet donut I had ever tried in my life. It was delicious. And so I said, we're gonna start a gourmet donut company in Washington, DC. There are no companies that are offering gourmet donuts in Washington, DC. So I incorporate District Donut, I find a chef, finally find a location. And within 2 months of us opening the first District Donut, guess what happened? 4 other gourmet donut shops came out of nowhere and announced that they were now in business. So to think about having an idea that sounds really great, you think could be a moneymaker, the power of the free market, somehow, I don't know how all these things happen, but 4 gourmet donut shops opened within a 3-month time period. So to think a little bit about how you should plan around competition, you'll never be the only product in the market, especially as a startup. And these are a couple of the companies, Golden Brown and Delicious. They did actually fried chicken and donuts. Actually, it was an important decision. So when we heard about these companies, Astro that does donuts and fried chicken, Zeke's just did donuts. But when we started and these companies kind of sprouted up, we had a pretty important decision we had to make at that point, which was, how do we diversify? Because clearly, these 2 companies had decided that you could use the oil that you fried the donuts in to also fry chicken, right? And I have all kinds of product issues with that, so that's a separate conversation for us to have. But you think about like the economics, it kind of makes sense, right? You go from breakfast product to lunch and dinner product, you can make more money. But these companies, when you have kind of 2 masters and you're not able to focus, you're like a jack of all trades and master of none. These companies slowly started to see that quality started dipping, and Golden Brown and Delicious is out of business. Zeke's is out of business. We'll kind of go through a couple other ones. Astro is still there. I don't consider them competition because they have 2 different product categories. But we decided very early on, because we were very tempted to essentially kind of replicate hey, let's make money at every hour of the day. Instead, we said we want to build a brand. Building brands, if you look like, who knows what exits are? No. Okay, so when you sell your company and make millions, if not billions of dollars, that's called an exit, right? That's when you sell your business. And so when you look at the brands, and obviously like we want to build District Donut to be a conglomerate, completely run Dunkin' Donuts and Krispy Kreme out of business. But at some point, right, we will sell the business and we hope to make a lot of money from it. And so when you look at the dynamics of companies that have sold for hundreds of millions of dollars, it's not because they have a lot of products, unless you're like a supermarket. It's because you do one thing and you do it really well. And you start developing IP. You know exactly how to make donuts and how to make 1,000 of them at a time. And no other company knows how to do that. And so we decided as we looked at the landscape that we're gonna focus. And I think focus is another takeaway from this, is in order to be successful in entrepreneurship, you're going to get pulled in 1,000 directions. Whether it's software where a client's telling you, hey, if only your product had these 2 more things, I'd buy it. And that's a decision that always comes up. We've had people ask us, hey, can we do donut burgers? So you start thinking about like, oh, we could make an extra $100,000, but you have to determine what is it that you want to accomplish, and we wanted to build a brand. And so to kind of look at like what happened over like 3 or 4 years as we started growing District Donut, is we started seeing our competition starting to shut down. So Sugar Shack's actually pretty recent. They have like 20 stores in the Virginia market. And so they're actually dismantling their entire operations. And they're actually coming to District Donut and saying, hey, do you want to move into the Sugar Shack? And I'm like, all right, what's your price? It's going to be low. So, so you're seeing these companies that obviously have taken a very kind of manufacturing, cutting corners approach. You're seeing them fail. Another GBD I mentioned shut down. Zeke's Donuts shut down. B Donut in Union Market shut down, and we actually took their space in Union Market. So when you look at, okay, how do you start to focus your product? I think that's incredibly important. And then kind of tying it to building a good team. I think one of the reasons why District Donut is still here today is because we have a team that hasn't broken up. In a lot of restaurant ventures, the main chef leaves, it's too difficult. And so, when you think about, okay, who are you gonna pick to work with? Like you really have to do almost like a psychological, kind of physical kind of analysis, because like you're stuck with this person and you have to ask yourself constantly, can I trust this person over and over again? And are they just gonna say, it's too hard, I'm out? Because if you have a partner that owns 50% of your business that just decides to leave and you're just left with 50% of the business, you're in big trouble, right? From fundraising perspective, et cetera. All right, kind of moving through, and this is, and I want to leave a lot of time for questions so that you guys can ask specific things around fundraising or decisions that we've had to make, kind of tough decisions that we've had to make. But I think spending a little bit of time on being a good person, I think is incredibly important. And this sounds pretty like typical, right? Like be a good person, like pat on the back, right? But like I mentioned, when you go out and raise money, when you go out and try to partner with people, when you try to recruit people to your company, you're in a like a white hot labor market right now. And it's good for you as you all are looking for jobs out of college, but it's really hard for me, because I have to compete with every other employer to essentially convince you to come work for District Donut or for Baby Scrubs. And so people don't just, obviously salary is important, very important, but when you look at, okay, when you hit a certain threshold on salary, you start thinking about other things, right? Identifying, who do I identify best with? Who do I trust? Who do I think I can work with the best and grow the most? And that's where I think this category of being a good person is incredibly important. And I'm gonna highlight one restaurateur, that's had a lot of negative press, and this is not to just put him in a like really hyper focus on Mike Isabella, but I don't know how much you guys know about Mike Isabella. He was a lot in the news, and he was one of the top restaurateurs in DC and got smacked with the Me Too movement, and rightly so. He's had a track record of sexual abuse, sexual assault. And so when you think about, okay, why is being a good person important? Of course, no one wants to, be a sexual assaulter, right? But I think, I don't even know. So the question though is, how do you get to that point? Do you think Mike Isabella one day just said, I'm into sexual assault today? Absolutely not, right? These are all little decisions that boil up to you pushing the line. And this isn't, you could go through books of cases, business cases, of people that had a penchant or a history of pushing the envelope, and then eventually they decided to make a decision that fundamentally changed their life for the rest of their life. And I think this is where, when we tie, I think what makes the Bush School and Catholic University incredibly important, and I'm just speaking for myself, But I think prayer is something that no one talks about. And having a prayer life and a deep relationship with God, whether that's going to Mass or just asking for help. And a lot of moments in our business, we've almost run out of money. I can think of baby scripts. We had a month left, and we needed one investor to kind of come through, and they came through like in the last month. There's so many things that are out of your control that you can only ask for help on. You have to work your hardest. You can't stop trying. But I genuinely believe, and this is why I believe in angels, like things come to you if you have that conversation with God. And so whether it's daily prayer. I mean, I wish I was more disciplined to go to daily Mass. I try to throw in a Wednesday. But as it just relates to, I believe good things happen to good people, and good people are people that emulate Jesus Christ. So I really think a lot of our success has not been my doing. It's been the doing of God putting the right people in our business at the right time. And the last piece is like, don't forget to be good to yourself. This lifestyle and what you learn as an entrepreneur is incredibly exciting and hard and fast. But you start making decisions. I wish 6 years ago, when you're young, and I think I'm still young, but when you make different decisions thinking, okay, like it's all for the business. I'm not going to take a salary. I'm not going to take vacation. So as you guys obviously think about being entrepreneurs, you guys should also find pockets. Take vacation. Like you think that everything is necessary at that moment. No, it can wait till tomorrow. Spend time with your family. And we talked about like the good life with Aristotle, right? But there's also the good life with Kanye West, right? And I think you've got to think about like enjoying the fruits of your efforts. And it's not just one long discussion about pushing these things off. Like you should take time for yourself to be with friends and obviously kind of think about family in a much more robust way. So.